What's up guys? This is my Yamaha XL800 that I'm going to be rebuilding in this video. If you didn't catch the last one, I tore this all apart and discovered some head gasket failure and damage to the first cylinder. So in this video, I have a new cylinder slap on here and I'll be putting it back together and getting it running. This is the front cylinder here that I've already removed. We're going to need to clean this gasket surface and get it super clean before we put on the base gasket. In the past, for like head cleaning and whatnot, I have used 3M bristle discs. These are pretty awesome for cleaning gasket surfaces. Now with that said, I would not recommend using something like that on here because you're gonna get lots of debris down in the engine. So what I'm gonna do is take a fresh razor blade and scrape this the best that I can. Okay, I think that's pretty clean. I try to scrape away from the cylinder to prevent anything from getting inside there. And as a final step, I'm gonna hit this with some brake clean. In that last video, I had my suspicions of damage to the cylinder and piston. I tore it down off camera and discovered a cracked ringlet on this piston, and obviously this thing is fried. I had rebuilt this jet ski in the past, so it already had a sleeve cylinder. I bought a new sleeve for it, took it to a local machine shop. They weren't able to actually put in the new sleeve. I called like 5 local machine shops. Nobody would touch a 2-stroke jet ski cylinder around here for whatever reason. What I ended up doing was getting a single cylinder exchange kit from SBT. So this makes this job super easy. You can go on their website and order this kit. It'll come with everything you need: the power valve gasket, the base gasket, head gasket, piston, rings, new wrist pin bearing, pretty much everything, plus a new cylinder with a new sleeve in it. So it makes this job super easy. Unfortunately, I wasted a ton of time with all these machine shops locally before I just went ahead and bought this. Here's the new sleeve cylinder from SBT. You can see that there is a sleeve. From the factory, these did not have a sleeve. They had a Nikasil plated cylinder. Those are pretty expensive if you were to try to get your hands on one. And to get the plating redone, at least from my research, it costs quite a bit. So it's usually more cost effective to sleeve these and get that board out. It looks like this already comes honed from SBT, so that's going to save us a step. I will have to transplant the power valve from the old cylinder. And what you're going to see me doing here is checking the ring gap on this piston. I'm not sure if SBT gaps this before they send it out. I just want to verify it's correct and not trust somebody else. The ring gap on the Yamaha 800 is between 4.5 thousandths and 5.5 thousandths. I have a 5 thousandths inch feeler gauge that I'm going to check this gap with. It's honestly, it's acceptable right out of the box. So let me check this other ring here. One thing I'd recommend doing before we put this in the ski is, this is the front. I'm going to install the rear circlip ahead of time, so I'm not trying to do this in the jet ski. Definitely will make it easier. Whenever you put this in here, you don't want the gap aligned with the hole, so just keep that in mind. You almost certainly will not be able to tell what I'm doing whenever I'm putting this into the jet ski, so I figured I'd outline it here. I'll be inserting the wrist pin into the piston, starting it in there. Then one of these shims, washers, whatever you want to call it, goes between the rod and the piston. The wrist pin you can have set inside of the rod already. So this will push through it. Once this pin is almost all the way through, you need to put the other washer on. Not really the easiest thing to do with the engine in the jet ski. Just be really careful not to drop one of these washers. Additionally, you're going to want to oil your wrist pin bearing. I do have some assembly lube that I will be using for that. You could also use 2-stroke oil if you have it on hand. Okay, success. Did not drop anything. Now we'll install the circlip on that side of the piston. This is the base gasket that's going to go on the jet ski. SBT recommends 3-bond 1211 as a gasket treatment on this. This is a metal gasket, kind of similar to a head gasket. I'm going to use the copper spray on it. I'm a big fan of this stuff. I think the 3-bond is probably a great idea as well. If you do the 3-bond, don't put too much on here because it would affect the compression ratio on your motor. I'm gonna go ahead and get the power valve swapped over from the old cylinder to the new. One thing to note is this has a power valve clip on it. If you don't have this on your jet ski, you probably need to put it on there. This clip prevents the power valve from falling into the cylinder, which would destroy your engine, and it's maybe why you're watching my video right now. These are like 20 bucks, if that. They can definitely save you from catastrophic engine failure. Because of the carbon buildup on here, this thing was a little difficult to get out. The SBT kit does not come with a new power valve gasket and the bushings. This is separate. You will need this. Okay, this is ready to go into the ski. Okay, so I'm ready to install the cylinder. If you have a helper, I think it definitely makes this easier to have one person on one side of the jet ski trying to compress the piston rings and somebody on the other side actually sitting the cylinder down on there. I already have the base gasket down there, copper sprayed. I've checked that my circlips on the piston are all good. The rings are still lined up with their dowels. So now I'm gonna try to compress those with my hand and sit the cylinder down on there. The next step here is to install the cylinder to crankcase bolts. This is something you're gonna need a torque wrench for. I think you can really cheat on this job on a lot of the other bolts. These and the head bolts, I would not just do them by feel. I had to do quite the digging to find the torque specs on this. We're gonna torque these to 16 going around, and then finally to 28. You're also gonna need a pretty long extension on your torque wrench to get down to these. Okay, the next step is getting the head cleaned up. If you had catastrophic engine damage, there's a good chance that your head might have got ruined in the process. This has no pitting or anything on it. It looks relatively clean to me. The only issue we're gonna have is where this blew out the head gasket. It feels okay. This will probably buff right out. We'll see. I am using the bristle disc that I talked about earlier on here. We'll see how that does just in a drill. If that doesn't work, you could also use a razor blade. And another thing I've done before is use knife sharpening stones, which actually works really, really well. These are relatively cheap. I think you can pick these up for like 150 bucks. So it's almost not worth going and getting it surfaced at a machine shop. It might just be easier to buy a new one depending on your budget. Just really checking that this thing is completely smooth and you can't feel any defects in it. You do want to be careful with the bristle disc because it is slightly abrasive. If you held it in one spot, it could cause some damage. Okay, I'm about to install the cylinder head now. The torque specifications for that is 16 foot-pounds the first go around and then 25 the second. It is a good idea to make sure that these pistons are moving up and down as they should, which they are. Okay guys, one thing to note, I was running those down with my impact wrench. Just keep in mind, run them down, don't torque them with that. So now I'm gonna go around with my torque wrench and set these all to 16 foot-pounds. The pattern you want to follow is printed right on the head. Can't get any easier than that. Yamaha does say to recheck all of these bolts at 16 foot-pounds before continuing up to 25. And now the head is torqued. So we can start putting the exhaust back on here, and we'll have this thing running here pretty soon. Alright, I did some work off camera. I separated this exhaust piece because the kit comes with a new gasket for it. It definitely makes it easier putting this thing back together. Alright, the exhaust is back on there. And like I said in my last video, the exhaust is by far the hardest part of this job. It just fights you every step of the way. So now I'll pull it out of the barn here, see if it fires up. And to be honest, if it doesn't fire up, we might find this thing on the bottom of the lake. Alright everybody, that's it for this video. There probably won't be any more of the jet ski. Next step for it is a sea trial and enjoying it for the rest of the summer. Next up is continuing my super build, so if you're interested in that, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.